Yeah, they,
2 extra lanes, a turn.
yeah, but even if they add the 2 extra lanes on 450, you still got that bottleneck jam right at the roadway. So
All you're gonna do is get them there faster.
you're just going to have a wider lane of blocks going all the way back to 80. So, but I don't mind it. I wanted to do it. I really wanted to do it, but I should have done it before the advisory board was here.
Is my person here? I'm sitting here.
And Ray asked me what I'm going to do. I said, well,
We'll make Marcus up.
they want me to find another piece of
It looks
property
good on TV.
a little bit out of the way and do it there. And I said, no, it makes no sense there. So if you got any other ideas, I'm open, but they absolutely refuse to rezone it to general, what do you call it? Yes. The argument that they had was that if they give me that rezoning and I sell the property, somebody can come and do whatever they want to. Completely, but the question that I have to them is this. Right now you've got an empty piece of property that you make no tax money out of. The only tax money you make out of it is what I pay on that house. Right now what I pay on my duplex is $12,000 a year. So, you understand what I'm saying?
Is that coming?
I have no idea. Are they coming? Sorry? Are they coming? We have a quorum. They said they were.
You want to give them a couple minutes? It's up to you.
It'll be exactly 10:30, right? You want me to wait?
Your call. Your board.
Give them a couple more minutes, but. They said they're coming. I'll wait till 10:31.
Morning, Doug. How are you doing? For somebody that doesn't bowl, it was fun.
That's the best part is when you don't know what you're doing. Put up the gun.
Oh, we asked for it, but apparently they just put it up for kids. So we wanted to beat them on the score for the most points, and apparently that's cheating. So at least we didn't have the lowest score this year. It was a blast.
Did you make some money? Yeah.
I did not want a single door prize. You know how bad that is? They gave out 12 with 14 door prizes.
And you went in. Are we going to wait on Mike? Come back.
Yeah, let's wait for him.
That was fun.
That's the one that they do for, the fundraiser. What's the big bowling thing? Yeah, dude.
Have you been to Habitat Raising the Roof party yet?
Oh, yeah. I've missed the last 2 years I've been out of town, but typically I'll go every year.
It is a blast.
You dress up?
Me? Oh, I dressed up this year.
Oh, were you? Yeah, oh, yeah.
I was something I've never been before.
Oh, well. Trying to think outside the box. Does he come in and get permits? He didn't answer me. Hey, that's nice. You look good. We're waiting on you. We can start. We ready? Okay. Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Construction Advisory and Appeals Board. This is the March 8th meeting, and this is official. We're open. Welcome. Could I get an approval? The minutes were sent to you via email, and I'd like to ask for approval of the minutes for the November 9th, 2016 meeting.
I'll second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We're going to consider a request by Mike Hawkins on behalf of Paula Martin Jones Charities. I turn that over to you, Mark, for introduction.
Mike.
First of all, I'd like to thank the committee for hearing this request and thank the building department. We've been working on this project diligently for a while now, and we're hopefully getting to closing stages of this. The request we have, and I apologize for not having a PowerPoint on that, it's my fault, but you have the plan in front of you, and it shows the clouded area, the shaded area is the actual CrossFit gym, and if you look just to the top of the page, that's where we're requesting the canopy be placed. It's a vital part of the program that is going to be presented at this facility. We're going to want to move equipment outside for the kids to have an opportunity to work out outside, but in inclement weather, this canopy is important. We do have an assembly rated building that's masonry and steel, and it's fully sprinkled to comply with all the assembly requirements, but we're asking not to have to move this canopy out the 20 feet now, I believe it would, because we're going to be moving equipment in and out of the building. We've got two-story overhead doors that you can see are drawn on the plans there that open onto this slab that are going to be linked with the air conditioning system for that zone that shuts down so we can have a lot of outside activities in this facility. So that's the basic of what we're asking for, that we not have to move the metal canopy, non-combustible metal canopy, the 20 feet away from the building.
Do you all have any questions of Mr. Hawkins?
It's fully accessible on 3 exits, so there's not a problem with egress away from under the canopy. It's going to be open on 3 sides as far as, exit requirements.
And then does that open just like to a field? Or?
Yeah, it's about probably 100 or more feet to the first fence that you get to, and then it's the old YMCA dorm, if you have a recollection of where that is, and so it opens wide open to an open area on 3 sides.
And Mark, the code now keeps this 14 feet, is that what it says?
20 feet.
20 feet away.
Yes.
And what's the reason behind that 20 feet?
Fire separation, so fire doesn't leach over to the other side, to the other building. If it was on 2 different lots, you'd have a center line, your lot line, and it'd be 10 feet on either side. And what Mike was alluding to was that we recently just found out we've been enforcing it incorrectly. It's when it's on the same lot, you have an imaginary line, and you separate from that 10 feet on each side. So hence that's the 20 feet that they're talking about. But bear in mind, the canopy is all metal, non-combustible. The building is masonry, non-combustible, with a sprinkler system.
So there's no allowance in the fire code
No.
for non-combustible
And,
materials?
yes, under the building code 104.1, I don't have any latitude to deviate from the code. So I'm left with 3 positions, one being you're the deciding factor on that.
So the only reason that you actually have a problem with this, even though it's non-combustible, is because of the code?
Yes, and I'm given no permission in the code to actually make a change to the code.
And the canopy is 50? Is it
50 by 120.
Okay.
And the reason that it's important is that it's actually cantilevered over the parapet wall of the workout facility to protect them from rain and moving equipment in and out, so that we still can use the facility even if it's raining outside.
Okay.
So to make it easy for me to understand, it's straightforward like a mobile home that you would want to put a roof across it.
Basically,
That basically keeps it.
Carport, exactly.
Yeah,
metal.
it's just a carport that you put on top of it.
questions, could I call for a motion or a discussion?
All motion, accept.
Motion, do we have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, appreciate it very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you.
Welcome, Mike.
Okay, C is presentation and discussion of regular adoption of the National Electric Code and tandem of the state of Texas. Mark?
Yes. TDLR requires jurisdictions to adopt the revised national code as the electrical code for the state of Texas. Every 3 years, it's automatically done at the state level. And then the 2017 NEC will be the minimum standard for an all-electric covered under the state law in Texas when adopted this September. Chapter 1305.201 of the Act provides municipalities the separate specific authority to make local amendments to the 2017 NEC. The purpose of the NEC is basically the practical safeguards. The purpose of this code is the practical safeguards of persons and properties from hazard arising from the use of electricity. This code is not intended as a design specification or instruction manual for untrained persons. Did I go back the wrong way? Let me go back one. Not adopting the newest code every 3 years sets up a condition with electrical contractors who are bound by his or her state license to follow the current TDLR NEC adopted code. This may be in direct conflict with the Longview electrical inspector who is enforcing the 2011 NEC adopted code. Now, I did say not covered, so I just want to stop real quickly and mention that what they're talking about is utility company, ships, watercrafts, things like that, that we don't have any jurisdiction over. So that everything else is covered by the NEC. Let me catch up with you if I may. I gave a simple example, and the reason I put that up there is if you look at these two codes, these two books, they're the revisions from the 2011 to the 14 and 14 to the 17. So there is significant changes coming up. But if you take a comparison of the 11 versus the 14 versus the 17, what you're going to see is right now, the city of Longview enforces the 2011 NEC. So if you take a garage, for example, one 15 amp GFCI receptacle is required in the garage currently. We are in conflict right now with the 14, the NEC, which the state is enforcing, and one 15 amp GFC receptacle is required for each car space. But what they found out in their, over the last 3 years is that when we're doing a design, they're saying, well, this is for my boat, it's not for a car. So they changed it again in 2017. Now they've upped the amperage because of all the equipment that we now keep in our garages, and they're saying that one 20 amp GFCI is required for each vehicle bay and placed not more than 5.5 feet above the floor. And basically, folks were using the garage door receptacle as a way around that. So they've kind of showed that, what I tried to indicate in a very simplistic way is that what we're running into is at times our inspectors are enforcing the 2011 and we're running up against the 2014 today. September 1st we'll be up against the 2017, which is a whole cycle beyond, or 2 cycles beyond where we're enforcing. So the idea behind this is I'm going to, for the next couple of months, go over very simple illustrations of the NEC and how it applies and how we're using it. The particular, I guess the thing that I'd like to bring it to is that the consideration of moving with the state as they move every 3 years, if that's something that we can consider looking at as we go through these slides. That's actually all I have for this portion of it, but I just wanted to make sure that you started to get a flavor for how things are transitioning from where we're at and where we got to go. Because eventually, at some point in time, we're going to have to adopt the newer codes as we go down the road, and why not keep up with the state?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
This is above and beyond the 2015 Energy Code, or this is included in the 2015 Energy Code? The NEC Code. Are we following it right now with the existing 2015 Energy Code?
We are only enforcing the 2011 with the 2015 Energy Code, correct?
Okay, so my question is, are we planning on moving from 2011 to 2017 or 2014?
My recommendation would be to move from the 11 to the 17 and keep in pace with the state every 3 years.
Okay, I see a problem with that.
Okay?
Straightforward. We're already having problems with getting the subcontractors, their mindset to go to the 15 code. And we are going to have problems with when we start testing the houses and going through that. And I know we're working all together to get through that. But now we're adding another, basically a 6-year difference. Now I know we've worked with the electricians, and there's a lot of electricians that's already on base with this. But the cost increases on these houses is becoming astronomical. And I will be making a request to the board at the next meeting to give you a breakdown on the difference on the building to the 15 code that we just installed versus building to the house before that. Because I've done 2 houses now that I've done before, and I know exactly to the last penny what it's costing me extra on these houses.
You're speaking to the energy?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is an extra cost. Now I don't have, by principle, I really don't have a problem with this.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm having a problem is the cost of building is going up so quickly that it hasn't even seeped through to the people that's buying the houses yet. It hasn't even gone through the bank system to give us the better appraisals on the houses that we have yet. And we're already talking about adding more cost to these houses. That's the only thing I'm worried about.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand that.
We need some time to catch up. We really do.
Well, here's 2 things I want to bring to your attention. One is if there's any issue that's come up with any of these homes that you're building or anyone else, when the state electrical inspector comes out, they will judge each and every electrician on the 2014 code, and it's September 1st of 2015, regardless of what Longview does.
Oh, because we need to abide by the state code.
Then,
but what I'm coming down to is the cost.
Okay.
I'm literally coming down to the cost right now.
Understood.
We had the same conversation the first time I was here, and I can give you now to the last detail that I paid $6,500 more to build the same house than I did last year, just to adjust to the new energy code. So I completely understand where we go. What I'm saying is nobody has caught up to this yet. Not the banks has not caught up to it, the appraisals has not caught up to it yet, and not the clients has caught up to it yet. So what I'm afraid of is we're getting to a point where the houses are becoming too expensive to build. And I completely support this. I really do. But there has to be a buffer somewhere. There really has to.
So Mark, maybe talk about the time frame. So say the state is going to adopt this September 1st, 2017.
Yes.
What leeway do we as a city, I mean, obviously we're already 3 years behind on something. What kind of buffer can we discuss about when we could do that?
There's no rush. I mean, I would prefer to keep up with it, because the further we get behind, the more contradictions we run into the code. And thank you, whoever put that up for me. But I recently went to a CEU for the electricians, and they're already, they're required, their CEU is required for the 2017. They're not looking at the 11, they're not looking at the 14, they're moving to the 17.
I am completely with this, guys. I completely support it. You know me, I support everything. My problem is
cost.
We are running into a cost problem.
It's ridiculous.
I think
Doug, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
it is. The cost is ridiculous, and it's getting worse. But we as electrical contractors, we have to support that. What we're running into is these real estate salesmen going out and they're selling these houses, and the homeowners get the home inspectors and go out, and they're on the 14, and in September they'll be going to the 2000.
That's correct.
As far as electrical, and I think they're up to date on plumbing and HVAC. And they do these printouts on these houses that were built back in the 80s and 80s, in the 80s and 90s and stuff. And we didn't have these codes, but the printouts they give us is the up-to-date codes and stuff. And this is ridiculous, you can't rewire the house,
Right.
type of thing. But what it's doing is scaring the new homeowners and the new home buyers, it's scaring them, thinking, well, my house wasn't wired right or done right and stuff like that. So we're going in there having to fix things and bring them up to code because of the inspectors and stuff. Does that make sense?
It does, but something that's freestanding right now that was, it's compliant when it was done in the 80s or 90s or 70s for that matter, as long as it's not changed, it's still compliant.
Yeah, but I agree with what he says because I've run through this myself. It's a bargaining chip for the new homeowner.
Sure.
And again, it comes down to cost. You remodel a house, you bring it up to code, you do everything that you need to make it up to code. But when you get that printout, and I know exactly what you're talking about, then it comes down to the fact that you have 20 things that's not in compliance, that comes down as a bargaining chip for the new homeowner that drives the price of the housing down and makes the profit of the builder less. So again, it comes down to, I am in complete support of all of this. I really am. I'm more worried about the cost of building going up in Longview.
Well, it's across the state.
I know, but the problem is people don't understand it.
Right.
Well, okay, and jog my memory, was it 2013 or 2014 that we went to the arc fault breakers in every room of the house?
Yes.
And that was roughly, what, a $2,000 price increase per house on average? Now we've done the 2015 IACC that, from my estimate, increases the cost of the house about 4 to 6% depending on the size of the house. Now we're talking about the 2017 IACC, or not IACC, the NEC, which I think is great, and I agree with Nico. We're going to have to do it. We don't have a choice, but we need to be careful about how we continue to add these costs. And it seems like over the last 3 or 4 year period, we've increased the cost of a house 6% to 7%, and it takes 2 and 3 years for the appraisals to catch up with the cost of that house.
Sure.
And the only person, the person that's bearing the brunt of that cost increase is the builder,
Sure.
because you're not passing it on to the owner because the owner can't pay for it because their appraisal's not allowed to
Right.
pay for it. So we're quickly going to get to the point to where Longview won't be a builder-friendly place to build a house because you can't afford to build the house for the profit margin that's in the house. And I know that money and profit shouldn't be a deciding factor on the city, but we have to balance that. We have to balance that concern with not necessarily adopting the code, but how we transition from one code to the next and
Sure.
give some sort of a grace period.
Well, and again, I'm bringing this to your attention because we're going to be 2 cycles behind. We don't have to adopt it September 1st or November 1st for that matter. It's a matter of when we're ready.
We need to adopt it. My question is, what is the city doing to bring the banks, and the new rules needs to be there. The new rules needs to be there. There's no argument about this. But I would like to know from the city's point of view, how are you guys contacting the banks, the appraisers, the people that actually is in the process of lending money? Because arguments like the house that I just finished, we never had to do foam insulation in the rafters. That cost me, to do the foam on the house, cost me $2,500 more than what it normally have cost me to do that. I never had to put an air handler in an HVAC system. Now I had to do an air handler in an HVAC system. I went from a 14 SEER to a 16 SEER, which all adds up expenses. Now you add all your wiring in the house before you do the foam seal in the walls, because you cannot do it afterwards. There's a lot of things that keeps on adding up, but when you ask for an appraisal, those things are not taken into consideration. When you ask for a loan to new construction on a house, those things are not taken into consideration because the banks do not understand that.
Well,
So
actually,
all I'm asking is, from the city's point of view, are you guys actually doing an effort to let the They know about the energy code change, but they do not understand it.
And we have made some inroads, nothing that will affect you yet, but we are talking to, through David Morgan, the raters, some of the raters are able to bring it to the appraiser's attention that they are rated, and they do make a difference in the appraisal of their property.
Okay, but you've got one problem with that.
Yes.
It's because the people are on the circulation system. They don't have the appraisals allocated for Longview. They pull their appraisal out of a list of people that they need to appraise their houses of, and they get people from Tyler, people from Dallas to come in there. So there's no set system.
Right.
Sorry guys, this is just not, it's not something I want to bring up in a meeting, but it is, in the end of it, it's about the cost of a house.
Right.
For me.
And I think the appraiser's hands are tied. You know, you can tell them all day long that it's up to code, or you know, it's a rated house and it meets the 2015 IECC. This is a great, meets every code, current code on the house, but their hands are still tied by whatever the appraisal on the home sales last year. So I mean, it takes, like I said, 2 to 3 years for it to push its way through the system before you see it.
Understood.
So.
But going back to what Barry said, if you do a home inspection and you're not using the current code, you're still in a position, you're vulnerable as a builder, that the home inspector is going to be inspecting for a 2014, and that could come up with deficiencies.
No, but that's fine. I don't build houses I build is up to code. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the cost.
No, I understand what you're saying.
It's,
I mean, the cost is gonna come, whether we adopt it now or 3 years ago, or it's been 3 years ago. It's
Yeah,
gonna
but
happen.
I agree.
There's a lot you can do about it.
I agree.
Well, his point is maybe well taken, is there something the city can do to communicate this issue to the people that need it communicated?
And we've had discussions with some of the contractors. Nico, I don't believe you, I think you might have been there when Steve Pirtle had, Councilman, had several of the contractors meet with us. And we do have some folks that are going to start making it, or attempt to make inroads into the appraisals to see what we can do, to at least inform them of what's transpiring.
Okay, so then, let's go back to the timeline. If we decide that, yes, we're going to go down this road and accept this code, what's the plans of the city to make sure that everyone understands what we're doing? And when do things become effective?
Well, from the electrical standpoint, they're already aware. Your electricians are already aware what's transpiring. They're already taking their CEUs for that purpose, and they're all based on the 2017. So that portion is already taken care of. It would be more so the contractors have to be aware that this is up and coming, and we'll do an email blast. We'll inform them as we go. But actually, we're looking for your input as well when to start implementing.
So if we implement, say, September, or if we say that we're going to, would we then start enforcing in January so that you're having this period of, I'm just asking.
Well, we
so
can
that we're
actually
not,
start
like,
now.
coming down on somebody and all of a sudden it's, I don't want it to be a surprise to anybody.
but I can
And I
answer
think
that.
to answer that question, the whole purpose for doing this is the electricians are already bound
Right.
by the code, and there's a conflict created. So we're just trying to take that conflict, the monkey off their back. So we're just trying to help them out.
The problem is not the electricians, the problem is the builders.
Yes.
Well, it kind of, what also is happening, we're in the 2011 code,
Yes.
NC, is that right? Well,
Yes.
There's some electrical contractors that are bidding their jobs and doing their jobs according to the 2014. And they can't be competitive with the ones that are 2011 because they didn't have to do the same things and stuff. And that's one of the problems.
That's a
Yeah,
problem.
true.
That's a problem.
Yeah, and the whole purpose of this is to bring it to y'all's attention, try to correct that so that we are not putting our local subs in conflict. And then, as far as adoption, we don't have to adopt it, but I think what Mark was saying is overwhelmingly at the class that he attended, that was a topic that was brought up that they'd like to see addressed from their standpoint.
True.
So
Make it an even playing field.
it would make it,
That's correct.
and the idea would be,
Same thing's happening in air conditioning too.
exactly.
Trying to get everybody, jobs that I'm bidding, which I'm doing them all correctly on code, and by the energy code section 1, there's still a lot of my competitors that do not know the changes and are bidding the other way.
it comes down to the
And like you said,
contractors.
It's gonna take a year or longer for some of those contractors to get up to speed, and then they're taking a beating on the backside.
We used to have a lot more flexibility, but as, you know, the state agencies and the legislatures, the different ones that adopted the codes for the different segments, are upgrading them and holding them accountable, it's more or less tying our hands. We're just trying to keep everybody on an equal playing field. Certainly there's gonna be cost and things associated with it. You know, to answer a couple of questions, what can we do? Are we reaching out to people? We can only do so much because our role is really more of a regulatory. It's not really the market side. And this is not a Longview issue. That, you know, I think the comment made about making Longview developer unfriendly. This is a Texas issue because we're doing what's required across the state. We're not independent of any other community. We may just be on top of it and trying to fix the issue, but this is really something that the various trade associations, the builders associations need to look at collectively. We can help with that, but that's where it really needs to come from that market voice, to let them know that there's an impact and there's you know, that it's not in line and it's creating other issues with affordability. And they can take that into consideration when they do their rulemaking and legislative processes. And then that can in turn, you know, go through the other trade associations and so forth with the appraisals so that they have better guidance to account for it.
So today, you're not asking for our approval, this is
No.
just a discussion period.
Discussion
And
on,
so at some point, we need to make that decision, or is that
Right.
decision made by this board, or is that made by the city? Tell me how that works.
City council,
City
this is a recommending board. Any code changes need to come through this as the kind of the, you know, because of the makeup of the board with people from various backgrounds, to make that recommendation to city council that would amend the ordinance. As Mark alluded to earlier, we're going to be coming back in the months to come, really diving into the details of what those changes are so that we do understand it and that we can try to be a helping hand in getting through those changes. But I think our goal would be, if we are going to pursue a code change, that we do it in sync with the state so that everybody, there's no lag time with the trades that get them in a bind, so that it's a level competitive playing field.
I agree with that. I do like how Mark compares where we are and where is it going to be, because that makes it so much easier for us to understand
sure.
what really are the ramifications and what do we really need to be aware of. Because a lot of the code isn't going to change, but then there's going to be very specific things that do change. And
Right.
that's what's helpful for everybody.
Well, and through code changes, you'll notice too that when they get things wrong, sometimes they correct them in future code changes. So that's another benefit of staying current, is things that, you know, we're bound to. We don't have the flexibility to say, well, the current code allows it, so we're going to, if we don't have that current code adopted, we're not bound to use it.
Right.
Yeah,
I have a
that-
question. What degree of flexibility does the city have, if any, if they adopt the code? Let's say in Nico's case, because the types of houses that he's building on a regular basis, pretty sure they're not putting a boat in the garage, or the latest hybrid vehicle. So they wouldn't have a requirement for that. Now, this is just the example, so that's why I'm speaking to that specific example. What tolerance is there to say, this garage doesn't need that electric, these drops, so do you have to put them in there, or is it something of, if you put it in there, then it has to be the 20 amp GFCI? Or is there any type of, well, in this particular house, since we're building it to this spec, or because it's for this type of project, it doesn't need those or doesn't warrant those, so therefore it doesn't need reception period in the garage?
The code doesn't give us any latitude to make those kind of adjustments.
Well, yeah, and I know that's not y'all's deal, but you see where the resistance is because it lacks intelligent thinking in that.
No, let me just add to that. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah.
That it needs to go up to the code. That's a given.
Yeah, we absolutely.
There's not a.
But it adds, like
It
I said,
adds.
cost.
The only thing that I'm worried about is the adding of the cost. That's the. I'm all for the code change. I'm all for, because everything we change actually makes it easier and safer.
Yeah. I'm for it, just so you know, I'm just trying to figure out what kind of leeway we
And
have.
as far as when we adopt code, being home rule, we can make local amendments, but we are bound that those amendments have to be equal to. They can't be less stringent. So, you know, if we make a local amendment to kind of clarify something or clean something up, sometimes the codes are a little vague, they're not black and white.
Right.
We can do that. We can't accept something to make it less stringent. Now, in the case, that's what one of this board's functions is, to look at case-by-case situations. You know, we have to, you know, like we just did, we have to take a real hard and fast look at that, because we have to look at the life cycle of these houses too. And although the person that's moving in right now may not have a need, the life cycle of the house and the purpose of the code exceeds that.
Okay, Michael, I completely agree with you, except for one single thing. If you take all the cost involved, now we're talking Habitat. If you take into cost involved in the last house I built for Habitat, and that is, we're finishing it out right now. We should be having a final inspection sometime next week on this house, 507 Sabine. If you take all the cost involved in that house was $93,000. $93,000. Now that includes the gift in kinds that we have. It includes the city donating the $6,100 for the water and the tap fee. I'm talking about the breakdown. In the south of Longview on Sabine Street, where the average house price is between $40,000 and $60,000. So if we go back to Habitat, not to just custom building, I'm building underwater in an area and selling it to people underwater before they even move in. It went from, when I started building the first house for Habitat, it cost me between $68,000 and $72,000 to build the house. Now, it is all the cost involved, everything that went up over the last couple of years, and that's over a 7-year period. I'm down from $72,000 to $93,000. So again, I am supportive of all the codes. I like doing that because it actually covers my backside and it covers everybody else. What I'm worried about is at some stage we're going to get to a tipping point where it makes absolutely no sense to build a house in the south of Longview.
Well, and I think that's why the city has adopted the ordinance to allow for fee waivers for slip, also for...
I'm all for it. I've just taken that into consideration.
Sure, and I think that's one of the reasons taken into consideration, is that that's a very different market than the normal housing market, and so trying to offset those differences to make it affordable, make it comp to where they can get loans and sell. Part of the small area plan discussion for I-20 last week was looking at neighborhood renaissance and some things that we can do to bring up neighborhoods for neighborhood revitalization. That's a first start to revitalize our corridors. So I think we're going to be looking at things like that, how we can rebuild our neighborhoods and put value back into them so that we don't have this problem. That doesn't answer your question, but that's something that we're looking at for sure. You know, and unfortunately, I don't have the answer, but that's certainly something that we're monitoring as well. You know, if it was something that we could really control, I know that we would look at that. But you know, that's where, when we start talking about affordable housing and so forth, that's where it's really going to take the different trade associations to get involved and really do a good job of explaining what the true impact is. You know, that it's the comps, it's the, you know, so on and so forth, that's affecting the affordability and just the ability to even start building from scratch, because, you know, you're not going to build if you can't get comps and get loans. It has nothing to do with what that cost actually is.
So we're saying, like any existing lot on the south side, you can't put a house on it and pass code and come to your appraisal?
No, the appraisals are still fine. The appraisals on that $93,000. Remember, I was just giving this as an example. We take the $6,100 off that the city actually gives us for the water and sewage. That brings us out to $97,000. Oh, $87,000. Then we take off the gift in kind that we get from people. That's usually about $10,000. That brings us to whatever, $77,000. But for me, I have to keep track of every single thing that goes
What it really
into that house, what the real actual cost is, even the donated items that goes into that house. Now, my argument is this. The last house that cost me $93,000 to build was appraised for $95,000.
That's what I'm saying, if you're a builder,
Yeah,
you can't do it.
So it comes down to, for me, to the point, and now I'm talking from Habitat's point of view. And I've said this the first time we've talked about it. I've said this many a times after that. We're in the position of neighborhood revitalization, but nobody has mentioned anything to us about upgrading the neighborhoods. So I don't know anything about the neighborhood revitalization, but Habitat's got a massive program and grants that can do a neighborhood revitalization if it's connection with the city. Again, for me, and I've said this on many meetings, it becomes a tipping point of where can you revitalize the neighborhood, or you just have to move and build into the area and charge the people more to build there. And as far as I'm concerned, in Habitat's point of view, we are very near at that tipping point. But again, we're trying very hard to cut the cost of building so we can keep the people in the areas where they always stay together. And again, guys, I am all for this. I'm all for the code changes. I like the code changes. I like the 215 code. All I'm asking is, we're running into the problem of getting appraisals and getting loans from the banks. That is my main concern. It's not the code change. It's the cost that goes along with the code change.
Nico, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Are you aware of anything the Builders Association is doing to assist you in that quest?
I actually just sent an email, because I'm on the board of directors now at the Builders Association. Right. I just sent them an email to put me on the next agenda so we can talk about the code changes.
Okay. Because
I would really like the ETBA to start getting involved with the city and actually start working together for once.
I wrote the same note.
Well, and as you may remember, when we went through the code change a couple of years ago, we partnered with the Builders Association, and that's a big push.
And 5 builders pitched up.
There was not good turnout throughout the process.
Next time, 7 builders pitched up. That's why I said it's not the subcontractors. The subcontractors are all up to date. The insulation, the HVAC, everybody that actually has to work on the code are all up to date. But when you have 2 subcontractors bid on the same job, which can change $5,000 to $7,000 difference bids between putting in a new HVAC system that's a 16C and a 14C HVAC system on a big house, and you do not know the difference between the two. Mm-hmm. It's not the subs, it's the contractors. And again, I am all for this. I'm all for it. I'm more worried about the cost involved in going with it.
I do have a question, Mark. Whenever we look at this in future meetings, I know you said something about, or Michael said something about taking a look at where the 2011 is, where it compares to the 2017, and where those increases could be. Whenever you do that, can you also notate which ones are prescriptive or not? That way, we know if the city has latitude on some of those to either adopt or not adopt, but still adopt the 2017 to make sure that everybody's covered under the 2017. Question?
Yeah, I think if it's in the code, it's going to be prescriptive.
It is prescriptive.
I mean, the code is thou shalt.
I could read this too, but Michael's already summarized it.
Now,
basically, the code is the code. We have a chance to modify it, but it has to be as strict as the code.
Now, sometimes the code does have some flexibility, but it's going to be
limited.
It'll give you the paths. It'll give you both paths.
Yeah.
It's very limited where we have any latitude.
I just remember in the 15 code, there were several areas where you could go one way or the other.
With the energy.
In the energy, there's several paths to compliance.
That's correct.
But in the electrical code,
everything's
it's very hard and
it's
fast.
very black and white.
Hard and fast.
Yeah.
So what's the next step?
Well, I think we need to continue the discussion and to Nico's point, maybe consider some alternatives or some suggestion you give us, what you're looking at as far as cost and what we can do to assist you on that. I don't know that we can, but something that we can talk about.
The cost of building is just going up, that's all.
Right.
Simple.
The second thing I did want to mention to you is that we're going to start we already have a couple vendors for energy. We're getting off the electrical for 1 second. We have some vendors that are applying for becoming third-party vendors, inspectors for us for energy. And I'm going to ask for a discussion with you in one of these future meetings to discuss the qualifications we're going to need. The code calls it for the building official's discretion, but I would certainly like to have your input before we make it hard and fast.
And then we could get a list of those approved?
Yes.
So that,
yes.
Yeah.
I have 3 right now that we've tentatively approved because I don't really have real strict guidelines. But I really would like to shore those up as quickly as possible to make sure that we're being consistent. And that's really important that we stay consistent.
It's kind of treading new water.
They just do the inspection of the energy code
Yes.
components?
Mhm.
They don't do commissioning or anything like that?
Not yet.
Okay.
We're one of them has sought out an engineer to work with him in a SPEAR person to assist him in doing the commissioning, or at least attempting the commissioning. But that is something that we don't have any commercial energy inspectors
I
just
thought
yet.
it was my understanding David had that capability.
He does have, well, and again, that's a discretionary thing on my part,
Okay,
and it says an approved agency, so we've allowed him to do that.
okay.
But I would like to shore those requirements up so that we stay consistent when we're talking to people that want to do that. Doug, you look like you had a question.
I do. So you're gonna instead of using your inspectors, you're gonna start subcontracting them out?
Just on the blower door, the duct blaster, and the third-party energy inspection in that particular way. In David's case,
Why would the certificates that they turn into you not be sufficient?
well, I have, without mentioning names, I have a HERS rater that I'm not sure is actually kept up with his CEUs. I have a BPI analyst that does not have the ICC energy inspector / plans examiner certification. And that's pretty much a bottom line. Either you have the HERS rater or BPI analyst as the first portion, and all of them should have the ICC inspector because they are working with the ICC manual or code. So again, I just want to be consistent so that we're fair to everybody.
Yeah, 'cause right now, they're just
Three.
two HERS raters in the area,
Well, 2 HERS raters and 1 BPI.
but the BPI guy's not totally certified, right?
There's only one that's totally certified. The qualifications I'd like to see. The other HERS rater does not have the ICC certification, nor does the BPI analyst have the ICC certification.
Wow. But they're able to produce the HERS rating certificate?
He does, but I don't know. I haven't checked to see the CEUs. I'm hard pressed to push that issue yet. I'd like to get some input from all of you. I mean, if
He's producing a HERS rating certificate, then he's putting himself on the line if he's not HERS rated.
well, they have there's a secondary part to a HERS rater. They have to send it to their, and I forget the technical name for it, but it's another person.
There's levels of
Yeah, they
HERS
have to
rating.
send all their ratings to a third party, and they tell them that they've qualified, that home is qualified. And if you're not keeping up with your CEUs, you don't have that third party. They just have a certificate saying they did it one time.
Yeah, it's a mess.
But that could be a future discussion if you would.
Well, it's a challenging problem right now because it's what's going on out here in the market, trying to get the energy code passed and getting this HERS rating. That they're still not knowing what to do. They're not knowing to get that HERS rating certificate or the BPI certificate. They're getting something, like you said, now they're getting something from, there's a guy out here doing some BPI, and you were saying he may not be qualified.
No, what I'm saying is we don't have hard and fast qualifications that we're accepting. I've accepted the 3 of them. I've accepted what they have temporarily until we make a hard and fast rule.
Yeah, there's, I think to kind of sum it up, there's multiple ways you can do that. The code just says it's up to the building official to determine what's appropriate to accept. There's not a standardized national certification that says you're this. There's multiple certificates that would qualify you. And so what he's wanting to do is get y'all to say what all they have to have, what's appropriate, because I think what we want to do is ask y'all if we need to register them and keep track of that so that we can, A, pass that information out, but make sure that it's on board with all of our other trades, because the energy code portion is rapidly moving towards a separate trade.
The way it is now, though, when Mark and I read through it, is that it really allows him to make that decision.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, he is really the decision maker.
Right, but I would like to have all of your
There's
input.
a big difference between the BPI guy that went to school for 3 days and the Hirsch Raider who went for 6 weeks.
Right.
And,
Right now.
and that's what we want to give y'all the opportunity to discuss. We just wanted to kind of bring up that this is something we're going to bring next month.
Mhm.
And then next month, we'll really get into the details of discussing it, and probably won't have a decision next month, but we at least, that's one of the things we want to start talking about. And as you may remember, months ago, maybe a year ago, we said we want to meet monthly. This is one of the reasons. We've got a lot of things to talk about outside of variance cases and so forth, so.
And this one is pressing because I want to be fair to the contractors out there that we're getting, you're using one fella and for one person, they're using another, and you're not getting the same value.
Yeah, well, because when you're on the bidding side, one of them's $50 and the other one's $500.
Right. And with 3 or 4 of them, it'll be a more competitive market.
Right.
I'm all for registration.
Okay, so item D is public comment. Do we have any public comment? Anything else?
Oh.
Do we have anything else that we need to discuss today?
When's our next meeting? Do we know?
A month from now?
It's the 3rd or the 2nd, it's April the 12th.
April 12th. If there is no more business before the board, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't realize.
Yeah, and probably what we need to do, we can keep staff updated, things like that on the agenda. We can give them this is more FYI.
I understand we don't have,
Then it kind
I
of
really do.
more
But man, something has to be done.
No, and that's fine, it's just, it starts getting on the edge of something that's not on the edge.
It really is.
Take care, Cody.
Yeah, see, that's in the newspaper, that people need to have a chance to
They're not gonna own it.
hear it. You know what I mean? So, yeah, so we